Howdy friends, welcome to the Deep Space Travel Break, a podcast about sci-fi games, but for being honest, mostly No Man's Sky. Brought to you by my latest videos. Whether you're looking for the most comprehensive No Man's Sky lore video on YouTube, the most comprehensive city rankings of the Assassin's Creed series, or just the dumbest No Man's Sky videos ever, check out my latest content. But don't go yet, because this is the Deep Space Travel Break, episode 18, and today we're speculating on 2023's upcoming content updates. Quick housekeeping first, thanks y'all for helping me reach 14,000 subscribers. Last January I was at like 300 or 400 subscribers, so I am truly grateful for all the support you've given me. And that's it for housekeeping. Really short segment, that one. So let's get to the topic of the show. 2023 update speculation. So I haven't done a speculation video in a long time. I figure my guess is as good as anyone else's, and considering how many folks are producing update speculation videos, I usually prefer to produce something different. However, speculating is a ton of fun, and I'd love to see what y'all are hoping for or expecting. So let's get speculating. Oh wait, I should also clarify that this is not a prediction video. The last time I did one of those, I got every prediction correct, of course. But I had a lot of info to go on at that time, so this time it's just speculating for the fun of it. Alrighty, so I'm going to format this podcast into two halves. Discussion about what we know, what's been confirmed, and then speculation based on what might be coming, which includes, personal hopes for upcoming content and baseless speculation. So let's start with what we know for sure. No Man's Sky is coming to the PSVR 2 within the headset's launch window. And while launch window is quite vague, Sean previously gave us a much clearer date in November, stating, quote, "We also found time to announce that No Man's Sky is in development for macOS and PlayStation VR 2, the latter coming as a free update in February 2023, day and date with the PSVR 2 hardware." So we should reasonably expect a free update to the game on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, a little less than a month from now. We know this update will add support for the new platform, but should we also be expecting new content for all platforms? I think so. Last year, we received the Sentinel update on February 16th. The year before, we received Companions on February 17th, and in 2020, we received the Living Ship update on February 18th. This leads me to believe that we should probably expect a regular content update alongside the new PSVR 2 support. Of course, keep your expectations in check. It could easily be just a PSVR 2 patch and some bug fixes, which I wouldn't mind some bug fixes. Although, with the exception of the next generation update, every update that includes support for a new platform was accompanied by new features, so that does lend credence to the idea that a full update will be launching in February. I might also expect a new Expedition, Expedition 9, to release soon after. It's been about 6 months since the start of a new Expedition, and while we did have the Redux Expeditions over the holidays, I think it's fair for players to expect a new one around February, especially as Expedition 8 Redux just ended. It could also go the other way, with an Expedition launching at the end of January and leading up to the update, though I sort of doubt that'll be the case. So, that's pretty much what we know for sure. No Man's Sky is adding PSVR 2 support on February 22nd, 2023 as a free update. And we will likely see a new titled update and Expedition around that same time. Likely, not for sure. We also know that Hello Games are hard at work on the macOS version of the game, but that's yet to receive a release date. So, now comes my favorite part. Baseless speculation. Well, not exactly baseless, but definitely fanciful. Since 2020, we've enjoyed a pretty regular and almost predictable schedule of free content updates. We had 6 titled updates in 2020, including crossplay and next generation, 4 titled updates in 2021, plus the standalone Emergence Expedition, and 4 titled updates in 2022, plus the standalone Leviathan Expedition. Not to mention the Redux Expeditions over the last 2 holiday seasons. So if that's anything to go by, 2023 will likely have about 4 content updates and 4 new expeditions, barring any significant changes in development. So, what sorts of content do I think are likely to appear in 2023? Well, let's look at what the game's missing, what's been requested by players, and what we've received over the last 3 years. That might give us some clues. Because admittedly, every aspect of the game could use improvement, right? I could realistically go on for hours about what I think could or should be added to the game, but y'all wouldn't want that, right? So let's approach this categorically. Let's start with what the game's still missing, or rather, which parts of the game might feel incomplete. Perhaps the most obvious item is the space station and the space station cores that were added in the Prisms update back in 2021. When they were first added to the game, we were teased with a prompt that required a space station override, and it seemed like the new space station features were just around the corner. Of course, as you know, it's 2023 now, and we still don't know what space station overrides are actually supposed to do. It's been theorized that they might allow you to take control of a space station and manage trade. I could also see it overriding the Sentinel interceptors in the system, similar to shutting down a Sentinel pillar on a planet. However, I think the best case scenario, at least my best case scenario, would be allowing us to own and build on a space station of our choice. This would be accompanied by an overhaul to space station interiors, which I also believe is overdue. Considering how often we visit these spaces, their lack of variety is pretty perplexing. Settlements have infinitely more variety to them, and players rarely encounter more than a handful. Considering we've seen big changes to weapons, ships, space encounters, frigates, and freighters over the last couple of years, an update for space stations seems well overdue. I'd personally love them to be more procedural, of course, like settlements or derelict freighters, with every system being a complete surprise. I would also love more variation in services available. Sure, it's cool to have some services available on every space station, but there's no meaningful difference between Gek, Vy'keen, or Korvax stations at the moment. My greatest, fantasy wish, though, would be to have space station interiors be as vast and populated as small cities, since it'd be easier to generate a city-like environment in a fixed place like a space station as opposed to like a planet surface. However, I'd settle for pretty much any increase in variety at this point. Another feature that seems overdue for a change are the oceans and rivers of the game. While Living Ship, Frontiers, and Endurance overhauled space, Origins overhauled planetary terrain and biomes, and Prisms overhauled caves, oceans haven't been significantly improved since the Abyss update in late 2018. That's over 4 years since the bottom half of most planets have been updated. Considering the visuals of the entire game have been steadily improving with every update, with the exception of the oceans, it gives me hope that maybe they've been holding on to all of the improvements in order to release them together in a single water-focused update. What would that look like? Well, besides the obvious additions like more creatures, more biome variety, and better water shaders, there are plenty of opportunities to enhance underwater gameplay. While deeper oceans are certainly needed and would go a long way to making the game, more fun to explore, that requires new terrain generation, which I find somewhat unlikely to happen, especially partially, so only regenerating the bottom half of the planets. However, having the visibility drop with depth would go a long way to making existing oceans feel deeper. Having a larger variety of creatures that spawn at varying depths would also be pretty cool. If you think about it, we already have creatures and resources that are exclusive to caves on the surface of planets. So why not use that system and create similar circumstances underwater? Eels that only spawn in underwater caves, or sunken treasure that you can only find in underwater caves. That would make exploring a lot more interesting down there. Another idea would be the floating creatures or flora that you see in some of the pre-release footage. I would love to see variety like that. Also, different liquid types would take variety to the next level. For example, some oceans could have a viscous liquid, right, making swimming difficult. Or very aerated water would cause you to sink rather than float. Volcanic worlds could have oceans of lava. So essentially you just replace the water shader with a lava shader, and have it cause a ton of damage if the player touches it. Considering we have an infinite amount of water oceans already, I don't think players would mind a few planets with lava instead. Frozen worlds could have icebergs floating on the surface, or be completely frozen over, with the player having to break through the ice with their weapons to dive in. And these ideas are all without having to add in new water physics or anything like that. Players have requested waterfalls, waves, actual simulations of downhill rivers and springs. And don't get me wrong, I would love all of those. But realistically, the game isn't going to be able to simulate all of that on older consoles, let alone the newer ones without tanking performance. I mean, we can literally only have one cape on screen at a time, so while I would love to see water overhauled to be an actual simulation of the water cycle, realistically, just adding more variety through its flora, fauna, and liquid types would be more than sufficient in my book. So, space stations and oceans haven't had an overhaul in years. What else is seemingly overdue for an update? Alright, hear me out on this one, but settlements. Now, I know we only received settlements in 2021, but they left a lot to be desired. Aesthetically, they're perfect. There's a great variety of architecture between the races, and unmatched variety in settlement layout and individual building designs. However, the actual gameplay associated with them is lame. I mean, sorry. You can't store items in your warehouses, you can't plant crops in your agricultural buildings, you can't produce goods in your factories, you can't hang out with NPCs or sleep in your residential buildings, you can't even buy drinks from your cantina. The only building type that actually functions is the market, which has both a trade terminal and component vendor. So, I love settlements, but they're nowhere near meeting their full potential, even within a limited scope. So besides bringing them to our friends on the Switch in 2023, I think it'd be cool if settlements were improved in 3 key ways. Firstly, they should offer us unique gameplay opportunities. Perhaps you can take procedural missions from the bar or go on procedural errands for your citizens. Maybe markets offer goods that you can't get from a space station. You know, maybe they're illegal, or maybe they're just like made on planet. Or perhaps you could assign tasks to citizens in a similar way to frigate expeditions on your freighter. Right now, settlements are boring, despite being the most varied, visually diverse, and populated spaces in the entire game. It makes no sense that the place with the most NPCs has the least amount of interactions. It's kind of strange. So, secondly, more buildings should have gameplay interactions. For example, warehouses should unlock additional storage or something similar, right? Industrial buildings should produce products or crops of our choice. Markets could offer exclusive trade goods. Cantinas really should sell us food and drink. I mean, there's nowhere in the entire game that sells food or drink at the moment. In the whole universe, and for all the hundreds of food products, there's not a single vendor that sells them. I mean, I just think cantinas would be the perfect place for those. I mean, residential buildings, you could add beds, that would make sense. And honestly, more building types with more interactions should be added with future updates. You look at the way new vendors are added to space stations or new rooms are added to freighters as features continue to be added to the game, but no new buildings have been added to our settlements in the last year. Doing so would probably be difficult, but there's a lot of empty space left within settlement areas. At least from what I've seen, there's a lot of space left for extra buildings, and it would help to keep settlements relevant long after you've completed them. Speaking of which, the third key improvement is that settlements need to interact with the rest of the game. If you look at freighters, they're important to the game for storage, for base building, for making money, for storing ships, for building a fleet, for transporting exocraft, for warping and scanning. They can be customized and utilized in a variety of ways for a variety of gameplay styles. Base building is also flexible enough to vary from marking special planets to building resource farms to creating art and music. These systems enhance the core gameplay loops of No Man's Sky by integrating with them. You can purchase new building parts from the Nexus, you can find new frigates as you're exploring systems, you can salvage new building parts and upgrades from derelict freighters. As you're exploring the galaxy and completing other activities, you're also upgrading and going back to your freighter and your bases. Settlements aren't like that. You can hire NPCs to join your fighter squadron, hire NPCs to work at your base, hire NPCs to join your fleet, but you can't hire NPCs to join your settlement. You can use Quicksilver to buy building parts or to customize your player character and your starship, but there's nothing at the Quicksilver shop for your settlement. You can upgrade your inventory and purchase upgrades from both the space stations and the space anomaly, but there's nothing to improve your settlement. I think you see the pattern. Settlements are isolated from the rest of the game. Visiting your settlement feels like you're putting the game on pause to manage something else, when it should feel like a living, breathing part of the universe, and an essential part of your adventure, if you choose to include it in your adventure, that is. player choice is quite important. So, what if certain NPCs you encountered on your travels were looking for a home, and you could offer them a place with you? What if you could learn blueprints for new buildings by visiting other settlements throughout the universe? Or by logging into other settlement terminals, you could build a trade network of some kind, legal or otherwise. You could even tie that into maybe the space station overrides, right? Or what if you could collect items in your travels and display them in your town? Or even just being able to customize certain elements, such as the color of the banners or decorative plants. As with every part of No Man's Sky, there are just limitless possibilities. And I recommend checking out my other videos on settlements in the description below if you're interested in hearing more, because for now I should probably move on. So, space stations, oceans, and settlements are the features most in need of improvements, in my personal opinion. But what other features have fans been requesting over the years? Well, obviously, starship customization is a big one. Personally, I could take it or leave it, but I do think we should at least be able to repaint our ships. Multi-crew ships would also be neat. Those are large starships capable of holding multiple players, with each having a role on board, such as manning turrets or repairing damage. This would be great for multiplayer or for the solo player who loves ship interiors, if they decide to include AI support. Waterfalls are a big request, but again, I don't really see these happening. More variety with new biomes and terrain are always just near the top of the list, and considering our last major overhaul was in 2020, I could see us getting another one, but in all honesty, I could also see HG kind of being done with that part of the game, and instead implementing any sweeping changes to procedural generation into a possible sequel or future game, sad as that is to say, But you never know. I mean, planets are the center of the game, so they could improve them at any time. People have also asked for pilotable freighters, but considering their size relative to planets and the massive bases they can contain, I don't really see this happening either. However, I would love to see capital ship battles or large-scale space battles between fleets of freighters and frigates. I've always thought that space battles needed more variety, and frigates would be a good solution. They're larger and tougher than regular starships, however, they can be more mobile than full-size freighters. Pirate frigates and sentinel frigates would make great boss battles. And come to think of it, the Space Sentinels haven't been changed since the launch in 2016. They're definitely overdue for an upgrade at this point. My most requested feature though, and the one I've seen requested by plenty of others, is the addition of more procedural dungeons, like derelict freighters, only this time maybe on planetary surfaces. Imagine sprawling ruins with procedural traps, puzzles, and loot. Procedural sentinel strongholds with a focus on combat, or even procedural abandoned buildings with any number of biological or mechanical hazards. Derelict freighters are one of the most compelling, polished, and feature-complete gameplay loops in No Man's Sky. However, for all of their infinite variety in layout, they lack variety in location, theming, and hazards. You always get to them the same way, and they're always, dark. What if when you were exploring a planet, there were underground vaults to explore, or underwater ruins that required you to manage your oxygen while exploring? Buildings with corrupted sentinels are used as dens by dangerous predators. I do understand the difficulty of generating these on planets, so I could even see certain abandoned space stations being converted into more complex procedural dungeons. And, as with everything in this game, the possibilities are endless. So, at the end of the day, most of these ideas boil down to more procedural content for players to explore. Because that's what players love about No Man's Sky. Exploring. So, regardless of how it's improved, exploration really should be at the top of the list for Hello Games this year. Well, that and plenty of bug fixes. So, that was some quick speculation on my part, but I'd love to hear your ideas in the comments below. My head is filled with hours of ideas I'd love to share, but honestly, I feel like it's a little unfair to Hello Games to talk about all the unrealistic things they could add to the game if they didn't have to worry about budget, deadlines, or hardware performance. That being said, if you'd like me to do a video dedicated to how I would improve the game in meaningful ways, let me know in the comments below. I've done concept art in the past, but it might be fun to make a whole video on the subject of improving existing gameplay loops. Or, if there's a specific part of gameplay you'd like me to discuss, I'm happy to take suggestions. Leave a like if you enjoyed my rambling, or dislike if you didn't. and be sure to subscribe in preparation of next month's possible avalanche of information. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!